Welcome to thevisionarywoman.com.
I've been a very curious person my whole life, and like so many others, learned very little about my sexuality and about sex growing up, and also grew up with shame that far too many of us have for all different kinds of reasons. And so part of it was the curiosity, and then part of it was I really developed some very severe body image issues and an eating disorder, and later realized that in order to heal, I had to embrace my sexuality. And I hadn't even, kind of drawn those dots together. It was sort of one of those hidden shames that I think a lot of us carry. And it's been so empowering to embrace that part of myself that it's really kind of become my whole world. It's such a natural, beautiful thing, but we have all these factors that make it complicated. So one can be religion, for example. You can be very spiritual and really embrace your sexuality. Unfortunately, sometimes people learn through different religious dogma that, it's sinful to be sexual in certain kinds of ways, especially for women or anybody who doesn't identify as a straight man. And then there's the generational thing, like our parents and our grandparents and their parents definitely didn't talk about sex, right? So they don't know how to carry it on. We have one class, right? We have the talk about that just puts all of this pressure and fear around this. It makes it a taboo subject. And we learn very little. We learn about disease and pregnancy avoidance. For me, and for a lot of women, we tend to kind of absorb this idea that men have sexual fantasies and pleasure and all that, and it's normal for them, and they're supposed to be these super sexual creatures, and that for some reason we either need to be these kind of nuns. So there's a lot of weird kind of mixed messages that happen. It's with ourselves, and it starts with recognizing that our sexuality is ours first. It's this beautiful part of us, again, from the moment that we're born, we are sexual creatures. So really exploring that, knowing our bodies, knowing what we desire, all of that stuff is important. And then really investigating, our own journeys, looking back. In my work, I interview a lot of people about their own journeys to sexual empowerment, and there are a lot of commonalities. We all have shame for different reasons. Some people have gone through really difficult times. They've been abused, or just learned really, really damaging messages, or were quote unquote slut shamed for being anything. I mean, it could be for having sex, not having sex, having boobs, wearing certain clothes. Really looking at your life and saying, how do I really feel about my sexuality at this point? What do I want it to be? Do I want it to feel delicious, or do I want to carry this shame? Because I think it affects so many parts of our lives that we don't even realize. And I think part of it is looking at the language that we use and our own beliefs. So for example, why is it so bad if someone wants to have a lot of sex? Questioning those things and saying, there are healthy and unhealthy reasons to have sex, to not have sex, to go shopping, to not go shopping. We put it on this pedestal. It's like sex is this sacred thing that we have to have in this certain kind of way. And so really, really realizing that you don't need to have a sexuality and a sex life that looks like how you see in other people, or what is displayed in the media, or what is displayed in pornography and that kind of thing. And just knowing that really when you're in touch with your own pleasure and desires, knowing that, so many people struggle with this idea of there's something wrong with me because I desire blank, or I want quote unquote too much sex or not enough sex, or I'm kinky, so I'm ashamed of that, or I'm too vanilla or whatever. And just saying,
Right.
You know what? If I didn't care about what other people thought, peel back those layers, what do I really want to feel, and what do I desire? And knowing it's a journey, those answers change for all of us. To study, I'm kind of a sex geek in that way. I've participated in some research. I actually participated in a orgasm MRI, which wasn't just about orgasming, but studying what happens in the brain when you fantasize and do all these different things. I think it's so important, and unfortunately, it still is very limited because of all those taboos you mentioned. Sex scientists, they still have a really hard time getting funding because people go, oh, gross, it's a sex study, we're dealing with that. And it's progressed in many ways, but there's still so many barriers. So unfortunately, it really does come down to, I think we have to do the work again, in our own lives, and if you have kids, try to empower them to be very sex positive and to not have shame around that. It affects all genders, but of course women are affected a lot more. And unfortunately, you're right, many girls and women, the first experience they have with, for example, intercourse or sexual touch might be something very violent, rape, all of that. It's really devastating. And I think, really having those conversations and knowing that you're not alone and that there's support out there, I feel that there's more and more conversation. There still is a lot of stigma around that, people being blamed as the victim, because again, it's, we look at college campuses and the high level of sexual violence, and the question that's so often asked is, why were women drinking at this party? And it's like, why were they brutalized? Why did no one stop those people who were brutalizing? Why is this crisis happening? So, I think that journey of overcoming and moving past that kind of atrocity in your personal life is unique to everyone, but it is so valuable, and it's one that there is hope for. I think anyone who's watching and is feeling alone in that, whether you have come forward or not, you're not alone, and there is support. And I think it really does start with just reaching out to somebody who will listen. And if you're the person someone approaches, believe them, 100% believe them, support them, because that will affect every step they take beyond. There are so many barriers that stand in the way of us connecting with our own sexual pleasure. So when it comes to wanting more of it, we really do have to, first of all, embrace our arousal, because pleasure and our sexual energy, I feel like it's part of our every breath. It's about our whole being. So, I interviewed this wonderful woman named Pam Costa, who does work in this field as well. And her journey, she struggled with low libido, lower than her partners. And she shared with me that she had felt so disconnected from pleasure in her life. She said something really poignant about she learned to really feel the pleasure of enjoying the sun on her face, coffee, and feeling it down to your vulva, like feeling the pleasure. And I think so many people, there's so many, stress is a huge barrier. So making sure you're taking care of that, really prioritizing that kind of, I think sometimes if we feel that, we aren't putting our own pleasure first, somehow that feels selfish. It's that prioritize it and just let yourself, it doesn't have to be intercourse when we think embracing your sexuality. It could be so many things. Maybe you try a new toy. Maybe you try tantra, do some breathing exercises. Maybe you simply, read an erotic book or something like that. I think it's playful, like have fun with it. And then just keep learning, don't be afraid to learn. There's so much information out there. Wonderful sex positive educators and communities. And, I'd love it if people would tune into my show, Girl Boner Radio. And I've got tons of stuff on my site, and I'm so interactive. So if anyone ever has a question, I always protect your privacy if it's something that you don't feel comfortable talking about in public. But yeah, I would love to hear from people.
TheVisionaryWoman.com. Watch our host of insightful video exchange interviews. Listen to the Visionary Woman Hotspot Talk Radio to empower your evenings, and read fascinating articles of inspiration and perseverance, all with you in mind. Visit us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.